Welcome back to Booster Therapy and another episode of Commanding Presence. Today we have Sultai Commander, and it's one of our new legendary creatures from the Commander 2020 product. Today we're going to break down Zaxara, the Exemplary. So Zaxara, if you don't know what it is one colorless, a black, a green, and a blue for a Death Touch 2/3 that you can tap to add 2 mana of any one color to your mana pool. And whenever you cast a spell with X in its mana cost, create a 0/0 green Hydra creature token, then put X 1/1 counters on it. So essentially, we're looking to have fun with a lot of X spells and make a ton of Hydras and just kind of be menacing. So the first thing we're going to break down, as always, is going to be our ramp. So the ramp with this deck is a pretty standard package. Again, typically with most decks you want to run 8 to 10 pieces of ramp, really depending on the cost of your commander and what your curve looks like. In this case we have 10 pieces. The first one is Chromatic Lantern, helps us fix our mana and it ramps us. Kodama's Reach, pretty standard ramp spell. Rampant Growth, a really solid 2 mana ramp spell. This one a lot of people still don't play and I don't quite understand it. Arcane Signet, one of the best 2 mana ramps that we've gotten in the recent years for Commander. Skyshroud Claim, because we can get dual lands with this and they don't have to come into play tapped, which is always nice. A Soul Ring, because what would Commander be without a Soul Ring? Cultivate, like Kodama's Reach, it's just a staple. It's a very effective ramp spell. Farseek, similar to Skyshroud Claim, it gets us any of our dual lands, which is important for fixing, but it does come into play tapped. Bloom Tender, because it'll often be tapping for at least 3 mana, which is kind of what we need. And Birds of Paradise for our last mana dork, a very efficient 1 mana ramp spell that gets us exactly what we need. The next part we're going to talk about are some of our utility creatures. Our utility creatures are things that really help us to edge out our strategy a little bit or push us a little bit further ahead. The first one is the Herald of Secret Streams. We're hopefully making tons of gigantic, 7/7, 14/14, whatever they are, tons of Hydras with 1/1 counters on it. And how Herald of Secret Streams reads is any creature we control with a 1/1 counter on it can't be blocked, so it makes all of our Hydras unblockable. Spellseeker, it helps us get that perfect answer. So if we need an X spell, which a lot of them are 2 of a color and then X, this can tutor that up for us. Also things like Arcane Signet and some of our other good counter spells, or Assassin's Trophy if we need removal in a pinch. Spellseeker just helps us find a lot of really solid cards. Dryad of Elysian Grove, it's not quite ramp, but it will function somewhat like that. It also really helps us to fix our mana. So it lets, like Chromatic Lantern, lets our lands tap for any color. Nyx Bloom Ancient. So we are going to want to get as much out of our X cost as possible, and Nyx Bloom Ancient really just helps to launch that and push us overboard. Krufix, God of Horizons. If we're in a pinch where people are removing our Nyx Bloom or they're getting rid of our ramp or whatever the case is, Nyx Bloom is a good resource to just dump mana in it turn after turn if we have nothing else that we can do, and just build up that mana source. Notion Thief. This is a great way to lock down your opponents from benefiting too much off card draw and then putting that advantage into your own hand. Notion Thief is another one that I think it's starting to climb up in price, but if you're playing blue and black, I would suggest playing this card. It is a really deadly thing for your opponents. Colonia Hydra, or Colonian? I don't know. A Hydra that makes your Hydra boys bigger. So when he attacks, he doubles the amount of 1/1 counters on each of your creatures, so including himself. Nylea, however you want to pronounce it, God of the Hunt, gives all of our creatures trample. We don't want to get stuck with a bunch of Hydras that aren't trampling over, so this just helps us to ensure we have that victory. And then, of course, we have Peer and Toothy. Peer to give us hardened scales on a stick, and Toothy because it's going to counter up as well when we draw cards, and we're going to be drawing a lot of cards with this deck. It's just a useful card, and then if they do happen to remove it, we get to draw more off of it and find the answers that we need to be successful in the match. So the next thing we want to dive into are all of our spells that have X in it, and I really tried to push out as much as is useful without filling it with bulk that we're not really going to benefit from. So the first one is Finale of Revelation, just a very simple draw spell. If we can get up to 10, it also helps us untap our lands and have no maximum hand size, which is always nice. And this will surprisingly happen a lot if you can get that Nyx Bloom out there. Voracious Hydra, it's a good Hydra himself. He's going to benefit from a lot of our counter generation with the Colonian Hydra, with Pier, and it also helps us take out a target if we have to. The Steelbane Hydra, it's another great X-Spell Hydra, but it also helps us to destroy artifacts and enchantments that are getting in the way of us being successful or pushing our opponents a little too far ahead. The Finale of Eternity, I debated this card for a little bit, but when I really thought about getting to destroy 3 target creatures and getting the X benefit of creating a Hydra as long as I have Zaxara out, I thought this would be really a nice add. The Hydroid Krasis, card draw, gain life, make another Hydra. It is a Hydra. It's just really good. Mind Twist. I really wanted to play a bit of hand disruption in this, and Mind Twist is super evil. I mean, really, if you've got somebody who's been sitting out there drawing cards, you know, they're annoying the whole board with Rhystic Study or whatever the case is, this can really ruin their day by getting 6 or 7 into X, making them discard their whole hand or close to it at random is rude and great. Gaze of Granite, it's a nice little board wipe that will help us replace a Hydra at the end of wiping the board, so just a really effective board wipe for us. The Hungering Hydra, a Hydra that is hard to deal with. You deal damage, it just gets bigger, and it also, again, makes us another Hydra with Zaxara. The Genesis Hydra, kind of Genesis wavy Hydra, should be a lot of fun. Helps us to spill into some of our other spells. Animus Awakening, revealing the top X cards and putting all lands on the battlefield. So this is a ramp spell, but it's not a really dependable one unless you can really pour a good amount, 4, 5, or more into X. So I didn't want to throw it in our ramp. And it belongs to their X spells because this thing gets us lands and makes Hydras. Villainous Wealth. I've wanted a deck that really played off of this effectively and got enough value from it. Zaxara is the first time where I'm like, man, this is a good card, but we're getting so much value out of this. We're playing spells for free. We're getting another Hydra. It's just really deadly. Nissa, Steward of Elements. Another really effective Planeswalker for us to dig through our deck and scry and really, you know, kind of force up the things that we need, the spells that we need. Also has a couple other good mechanics, and it's an X spell, so we get a Hydra out of it. Mind Spring, X spell where we draw cards. Finale of Devastation. We can either resurrect something from the graveyard or tutor something up. The big payoff here is if we have Nyx Bloom and we've made a board state, if we can hit this thing at 10, this thing is more devastating than a Craterhoof. The Biomass Mutation. So even if our X spells are 2 or 3, they're really small going off, we're still filling up a board state with a lot of little 1/1s, 2/2s all over the place with Hydras. Biomass can be that finisher that really puts it all over the top. The Mind Grind. So each opponent reveals the top card of his or her library until they reveal X land cards. So we can really mill a great deal of our opponent's answers out of the way, which is just satisfying and slightly annoying, and that's what this deck wants to be. The Stonecoil Serpent, it's a very perfect and clean X spell. It's going to make a Hydra, and it's a Hydra itself. It's really a snake, but you know. Mind Shatter, it's the same idea as Mind Twist. It just costs 1 more black to play. Mass Manipulation. If people are getting those devastating threats out there, we can pay double X and we can make a Hydra out of it on top of stealing some of their permanents. Disrupting Shoal, getting to counter a spell, and we can pitch a card to counter a spell with this and still get that X payoff, which will still make us another Hydra. Thassa's Intervention, kind of wicked card draw or another counter spell, whichever we need. It has a nice utility, and again, it's an X spell. Syncopate, similar as the other two, it's a counter spell, but also makes us a Hydra. If you can counter spells and get Hydras, you're going to be in good shape. Logic Knot, exact same idea. We're countering a spell. We can delve on this one for X2. We're not really playing much out of our graveyard, so really pouring as much as we can into this, even if we know we only need it to be 2 or 3. If we can get 10 into this and make a Hydra, we should do it. Mecha Godzilla Battle Fortress, really it's Hangerback Walker, but you know, I recently got this one. I really wanted to find a way to include it. It works really well with this deck. It also replaces itself when it does die, so if it goes away, we get a bunch of little 1/1 flyers that hopefully we can you know, pump up and be devastating with. Torment of Hailfire, a really powerful X spell. It's going to be one of the most powerful X spells in this deck, where we're going to hurt all of our opponents equally and make a Hydra. And similar to Torment of Hailfire in so many ways is Exsanguinate, which we're also playing in this deck. So that's the last X spell where we make Hydras and we drain our opponent's life, and we are just evil and wicked and all of the things that are fun with that. Next, we're going to go over some of our utility enchantments. There's a handful in here. I'm including a Planeswalker in this too because there's not many other Planeswalkers that we're going to play off of, but enchantments that really help us with our game plan. The first one is doubling season. So one weird thing here is when you make a token, you are making 2 tokens, but they're both 0/0s, and only one of them is going to get those 1/1 counters, which will then be doubled, which is great. But you don't get that second one, if that makes sense. It doesn't also get to have that text on it where then it gets the 1/1 counters. So we get to double the token. More importantly, we get to double the 1/1 counters with this. And as we're using a couple of our Planeswalkers, this just helps benefit them as well. Unbound Flourishing. One of the best enchantments for this, and if you've been watching this card, I think it was like $4, $4 or $5 maybe. And April 1st comes around, they spoil Zaxara. This thing is now like a $15 or $16 card. It's incredibly good for Hydras. It's incredibly good for X spells. It works so well with Zaxara, doubling all of what we're paying into those things. Oko, it's just another utility card that really helps with removal, but also a few other things. It's just a mean Planeswalker. If you're playing Simic, play Oko until they ban him in Commander. Wilderness Reclamation. We want to keep our mana untapped as much as possible so we can play any of our instant spells, so we can counter and protect ourselves, especially protecting Zaxara. Wilderness Reclamation is just a resilient way to do it. There are other cards you could play, like Seedborn Muse does a better untap, but it also is a little bit more vulnerable. So I went with Wilderness Reclamation. Leyline of Anticipation, because if you can play things at instant speed, you should. And again, we can start the game with this for free. And the last one is Simic Ascendancy. This one I'm hoping kind of comes out of nowhere for my opponents. You know, it's something that just sits and benefits, but it's going to go off so quickly, especially if we have some of our things like doubling season into play. We're doubling the counters going to Simic Ascendancy. We're doubling the counters going on our creature. Colonian Hydra doubles counters. There's a lot of ways to get this to go crazy. And if we can make this win, I mean, it's a win con outside of having to beat people up with a ton of Hydras, which is the most satisfying win, of course. The next part we're going to go through is some of our disruption and removal. The first one is Arcane Denial. Always a huge fan of Arcane Denial, especially when you're playing more than one color. You're not always going to hit that 2 blue early on, or you're not always going to be able to keep that up. Arcane Denial, really good, and it draws cards. Disallow, countering abilities, not just spells, so it kind of gives us that utility to answer a lot of different threats. The Deadly Rollick. This one is one of the new free cast spells. I'm curious to see how this one works out. I mean, getting to exile a creature for free if we have our commander seems fantastic. Putrefy answers artifacts or creatures. Crowsand Grip. That way if somebody's got that grave packed out there or something pesky that they're comboing with, we can stop that and have that split second mechanic so nothing else can resolve on the stack. Beast Within, or come onto the stack above it, sorry. Beast Within, similar, it answers universally a lot of different things. It's destroying any permanent. And then, of course, Assassin's Trophy, similar to Beast Within. It destroys any target permanent an opponent controls. They just get a land out of it. And that is Zaxara. The last part here is really the lands. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail with the different lands in this deck, but they will be in the deck list, so please feel free to check that out. There's a TCG Player affiliate link that actually includes the deck list in it, so please head out there, give that a look. It'll give you the full look at the deck, and if you want to purchase it, you can purchase it right from there. I almost forgot, there's a few more cards. Some utility cards outside of our removal. We have the Ozolith, so we have a lot of Hydras with counters on it. When they die, this one saves those counters and lets them dump on something else. The Lightning Greaves to protect our Zaxara, also to have a haste mechanic within a set that doesn't have red. Regrowth, to bring back any of those X spells we want to play again, like Exsanguinate and then, Exsanguinate again. Expropriate, because what would a blue deck be without Expropriate? One of the best cards in Magic if you can get the mana to play it. And that is it. Almost forgot those few cards. Some great utility cards to make the deck even more spicy and fun. Hopefully you all enjoyed that. Hopefully you have fun with this deck if this is one that you're already playing. If you do have a Zaxara deck, and if I missed something that you included, I'd be curious to hear how you built it. Otherwise, remember, there's that TCG link in the description below, and this is Booster Therapy with another episode of Commanding Presence. You have a wonderful rest of your day.